My guest today is Dinos Iordanou, former chairman and CEO of Arch, which Dinos co-founded in 2001 and led from 2003 until 2018. He held a variety of executive leadership roles before that at AIG, Berkshire Hathaway, and Zurich. Dinos is an engineer by training and moved to the U.S. from Cyprus when he was a teenager. Dinos, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So one thing that I hadn't had the pleasure of doing before preparing for this interview was researching Cyprus. Interesting little country, and that's where you're from. And I thought I'd open up with some questions on Cyprus. First, who is the Cypriot you admire most?
My answer is probably going to surprise you, but
Okay.
the person that I admire most, it was my father.
Good answer. Why?
Here is an individual who, with fourth grade education and an orphan,
Wow.
who wore his first pair of shoes when he was 16 years old.
What?
He was barefooted until that time, and he actually borrowed those shoes and borrowed clothes to go for an interview to become a constable in the British police force. And he lied on the application that he was 18 years old because that was the minimum age requirement. He was only 16. He looked older, so he figured he can get away with it. And he did, and actually he was selected as one of the constables. And it was the first time, this was in 1932, it was the first time that the British police in Cyprus was a colony, it was a British colony at that time, it was starting to hire locals into the police force. Mm-hmm. And roll the tape, here is, a barefooted kid, living up as an orphan with two siblings and his mom. Wow. That created a family. There's 6 of us, all of us very successful, and a lot of it was his perseverance and understanding and teaching us great values that propel us into excellence in our future years. I was pretty successful. I have 2 brothers, they're medical doctors. My sister has a PhD. My other brother he was a biomedical engineer from Rutgers University, and he had a master's in biomedical engineering. And our kid brother, he has a degree in hospitality, and he's an owner of a restaurant. So the entire family has done well, and I think the foundation, the family foundation, the principles that my father inspired upon us, that environment is really gave us the foundation, to achieve in life.
So can you think of maybe a representative story, maybe something about your father that you think about, like that was the moment that sticks in my head, and that's I learned something big from him as a result of that story or that experience?
Absolutely. I went to school in Nicosia. I graduated high school. I went to the Army. It's mandatory. Once you finish high school, you got to go and serve. I did my 2 years in the military.
This was it was independent, or was it still under British rule then?
No, it was independent.
Okay.
Cyprus got its independence in 1960.
Okay.
I served in the Army from 67 to 69.
Yep.
1969, he puts me on a boat, Queen Anna Maria.
Okay.
And off I come to America.
Wow. His call. He said, "This is what you're doing."
His call. This is what you're doing.
Wow. Were you the oldest?
I was the oldest. I'm the firstborn. I had $200 in my pocket and a hope, and that was it. So I arrived here after 17 days on the boat. No communication with the family, and the reason I came by boat, he couldn't afford a plane ticket, so it was cheaper to come, by boat. So I arrive and I call and I said, Dad, I
made it.
I made it. I'm here. And his first 2 sentences out of his mouth: did you enroll in school and did you get a job yet? And he knew the answers. I just landed, so he knew it.
Yeah.
But basically, I think it was his way of sending the message. You went there for a principal to get an education. And the only way you can achieve that is by finding a job so you can sustain yourself. So the first two things out of his mouth,
Yeah.
did you enroll in school and did you get a job yet? And, of course, never ask, did you have a good time on the boat?
Nah.
It was a principle.
Yeah.
It was you going with a goal. This is your goal. You got to stay focused. And tell you the truth, I'm a pretty brave guy, but if I had a 19-year-old son, I wouldn't send him 5,000 miles away.
Yeah.
But in subsequent discussions with my father, he says, I knew you were ready. You were always responsible as a kid growing up. I started working when I was 14 years old, doing little things here, helping the family. 6 kids. My father was a policeman on a policeman's salary in Cyprus. Things don't go very far. I mean, handing down clothes it was the norm. I was the only son, pretty much, that I was having the privilege, because I was the oldest, to wear new shoes. My shoes they will get passed down all the way. Yeah. Even my brothers were complaining, how come he always gets because he's the oldest, and that's the biggest size. And then when it's time, you're going to get his shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what was this trip to America? Was it planned for a while? Do you remember when you first heard this is what I'm going to do for you, and you're like,
it was not planned. There were 2 options for me to get an education. Okay. It was either go to Greece, which universities are free of charge.
Okay. Plus,
but you have to pay your way for room and board. And my father couldn't even afford that. And there are no jobs in Greece for college students that you're going to go and work, earn some money, and pay your way through school. Where it was more appropriate to do that in the United States. We had a few friends, older people than me, who had already have come here. One of them who arranged for my my visa, the F1 visa, student visa. He came 4 years before me, and he was just graduating from Queens College, and then he went and got his master's at Rutgers University. And he says, I'll do the paperwork for you and all that. Get here, I'll help you find a room and all of that, and help you find a job. When I came, my first job was gas station attendant on Hoyt Avenue in Astoria, Queens.
How'd you get that job?
He says we're going to go around,
right,
and we're going to ask people, and it was a Shell station. He says, my English was challenging, but at least I can understand regular and high test, and and
that's all you need,
and that's all you needed, and clean windows, and and I got the job, and I had flexible hours because gas stations run 24 hours a day, so I was getting odd hours where others didn't want to work, and it didn't interfere with me going to school in the morning. So it worked for me. It was a tough job, but,
It was a job. So I want to come back to Cyprus for a second again, because it's an interesting place. I hadn't really looked into where it was exactly. It is nestled up right against the Middle East, right? And it's in terms of Greek culture, an outpost. It's pretty far away from mainland Greece, much closer to other countries. There's a lot of, let's call it, sectarian tension, right?
Quite a bit between the Turks and
Yes. I mean, that's a strange environment, I would think, to grow up in. Probably feeling, how does it feel? How's it distinct?
When I grew up, there was no tension.
Right. Okay. Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. The Turkey invaded in '74.
Yep.
Right. I was already in the United States. I came in 1969.
Yep.
I think is outside influence. The Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, they live next to each other. The village my mother was born had about 300 people. Half of them they're Turkish, half of them they were Greek.
So you had friends, Turkish Cypriot friends?
Yeah. My both of my parents, my father and my mother, spoke Turkish fluently.
Wow.
And vice versa. A lot of their friends, they would speak Greek. Now, Turkey as a big power,
Yeah.
always had
Ambitions.
to, get either some of the Greek islands or part of Cyprus, and they accomplished that in 74 with the invasion. And to this day, nobody's recognizing the North other than Turkey. And they did ethnic cleansing, with the approval of the United States. That's the thing that really bothered me the most. They moved all the ethnic Turks from the south of Cyprus up to the north, and they pushed all the Greeks on the south, divided the island, and now there is no Greeks on the north and no Turks on the south. And that was accomplished by Turkey with the blessing of Kissinger at that time.
Mm-hmm. So when you were growing up in this, let's call it before the tensions began, did you travel to other Middle Eastern? Did you ever go on vacations? I mean, I guess you didn't have a lot.
I did not go on vacations per se, but I did travel quite a bit to Israel.
Okay.
And it was to visit friends. I made
as a teenager.
As a teenager, I was working in a hotel up in Platras, which is the mountainous area in Cyprus, Troodos Platras, and Forest Park Hotel. I was working. I started when I was 14 years old.
Yep, that was the first job.
Yeah, first job and all that. And the rich Israelis, they used to go to vacation in Europe and all.
Okay.
The poor Israelis, they would come to Cyprus.
Okay.
Take the ferry boat.
Close.
And just,
Yeah.
it's very close.
How many hours on the ferry? How far is that?
It's, if you leave Limassol at 8 o'clock at night on the ferry, 6 a.m., the next morning you're in
big distance still. Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
Well, it's about 120 miles. Boats don't go, but, so it still takes about, 10, 12 hours to get there, But, the hotel was booked by the Teachers Union in Israel.
Okay.
So as part of their dues, they would get 1 week stay in Cyprus.
Like a perk.
It was part of the dues. So every Monday morning, a crew will leave, and Monday afternoon, a new crew will come in. They would stay until the next Monday morning, and every week. So I made a lot of friends, and they will invite me to go to Haifa and Jerusalem and all that. And I took those opportunities, to go and visit. So I've been to Israel quite a few times.
Was that unusual? Did friends of yours do things like this too, or is that?
There's some that you will go to Lebanon. Beirut American University was flourishing at that time. I have 3-4 cousins who are graduates of the American University in Beirut. But
that wasn't an option for you though, going there.
No, because of the same issue. There I had to pay tuition and also the living expenses. So I was the first one. And I came here. My second brother is a doctor. He went to University of Athens, and he financed his stay in Athens by coming in the summers, visiting me here, and working 2 jobs.
Oh my gosh!
He would work as a dishwasher and as a delivery boy down on Broad Street in downtown, right over here. There was you might remember it if you've been around here, for Keith's Coffee Shop. It was in the corner, right by 90 Broad Street, right on the corner there. So in the morning, he would deliver food into the offices, breakfast and lunch and all that. And then from 4 to midnight, he'll be the dishwasher. And he will save all his money for 10 weeks in the summer that he was here.
Sleeping on your couch or?
Sleeping on my couch. And then that will last him for the full year, paying rent and living expenses in Greece, in Athens. And he graduated medical school there, and then he came and became the chief resident at Roosevelt St. Luke. And then he built his own practice with, in in Astoria, Queens, called Astoria Pediatrics, and then later on they sold it to North Shore University Hospital, which just retired this year from it. But that's why I went back to my father. I mean, he instilled a sense of purpose. You got to have goals. They're not impossible. They might be difficult, but at the end of the tunnel is a lot of bright light.
Yeah.
So my brother got his MD and became a very successful doctor in the United States, all on his own. Mm-hmm. Not because my father didn't want to help, but he couldn't.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. You're a poor family.
Yeah.
To this day, my wife says, "Oh, you're a multimillionaire," and I am. And he says, you're so cheap. I says, I'm not cheap. I'm frugal because I grew up like that.
Yeah. Is it possible to instill that kind of value in somebody without that kind of upbringing? Like, can you do it?
We tried very hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
I think my kids. I'm very happy with where they ended up. I have 3 daughters. The oldest is 34. I have a 31 and a 24-year-old. Mm-hmm. They went to Northwestern, William and Mary, and University of Virginia. 2 of them graduated cum laude, and one had a 3.3. He didn't make cum laude, but close.
Not bad.
Not bad. This is Northwestern. 3.3 is pretty good. And they all very working, and they're very, very successful. As a matter of fact, my youngest one just went back to Medill, the communication school at Northwestern, and he's one of 19 kids they have admitted into their. She wants to be a sports communications person, either as an announcer or as a sightline reporter of some sort. She was a terrific athlete. She played for the U17 national team in soccer. She played for the University of Virginia. You
played soccer, right?
I did. I did.
Do you play in Cyprus?
I played in Cyprus for the pro team for 3 years when I was young, 17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
And then I played for the New York Freedoms here when I came to the U.S. And, I played all the way into my 50s.
Did you ever, I looked up a name, Cyprus. Did you ever play with Sotiris Kayafas?
Sotiris Kayafas, yeah. I played against him.
Did you?
In 1976, we went with the New York Freedoms, and he used to play for Omonia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meant to be the best Cypriot soccer player of all time. Would you agree with that?
I don't think so. In my view,
Okay.
there were others out there. It was very, very good.
Yeah,
very
sure.
good. But I think the best that was named played for Apollon Limassol called Kristallis.
Okay.
He was phenomenal player.
When was he active? When was he playing?
He was active right before him. He was in the early 60s, mid 60s, and he played for AEK Athens. Mm-hmm. He went to Greece and played. And in those days, there's a lot of players now that they play all over the place overseas. But it was unusual for him. But he was recruited and played for AEK Athens, which was a big club in Europe. And then he came back, to Cyprus to play. But I enjoy the game, and my daughters play. My oldest played for Northwestern, and my young one played for University of Virginia. She was the starting left back. She went all the way to the College Cup.
Cool.
And she played pro for a year. Didn't like the environment. There's not a lot of money in pro soccer. She played for. She was drafted by the North Carolina Courage. She didn't want to stay here. She went overseas. She played for Medgilla in Norway. And then she played for Apollon Ladies in Cyprus, and then she came back.
Mm-hmm. So obviously an important part of your own kind of life and your family, the sports. Do you think that that's a necessary? So here's an observation. I find that it's common for people, let's call it people who work hard, have that kind of ethic, successful people, to often have a lot of passion about sports. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's is it?
Yeah. Listen, young kids. I don't care if they're boys or girls. They have quite a bit time on their hands.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So now how do you challenge that energy, and how do you challenge the teachings of really playing a team sport, learning how to play with others and share and try to make others better. The best soccer player is not the guy who is the superstar, but is the guy who elevates the play of every player on the field. Pele was like that. He will make everybody playing around him better because of knew when to pass the ball, he knew when to keep the ball, etc. But also is the camaraderie of, on these travel teams, you travel. I stayed to more Motel 6, in my life with my daughters as they were growing up. But you mix rich kids with poor kids, with different ethnicities. We have Spanish kids, we have black kids, we had white kids, and that creates a great environment for the kids to be brought up. In addition, you just created a discipline. They have to go to practice.
Yep.
They have to manage their time well because they still have to do homework. They still have to do well in school. So there is less time to be hanging around the neighborhood corner or going down to the mall at the theater, wasting their time and associating themselves with bad actors. So I view sports as part of the upbringing and an important ingredient in creating structure with purpose. You're achieving things because you're competing, you're trying to get to the next level. Let me make the travel team. Let me make the state team. Let me make the regional team. Let me make the national team. Not all my girls have done that, but my youngest one has done that. My oldest daughter got all the way to state. She made the state team, which is an accomplishment.
It sure is.
Of course it is. And then she got recruited and she went to play for Northwestern, which is Division I, Big Ten, sport. And I think that helped quite a bit in a lot of different respects as to how you deal with other people, how you become a team player, which is very, very much part of the success individuals have in businesses. Very, very few people in my 45 years in insurance have done well as individuals.
Okay.
If you're not a team player, if you're not sharing, you're not going to do well. You can be a good manager. You can be a good colleague. At the end of the day, team performance is being discovered now. It's the new password
Sure.
or the buzzword. To me, teamwork, I discovered way back that I knew when I had cohesive teams that they were working together, not only their productivity, but the solutions that they will come up with, they were so far superior than very bright individuals working on their own. Yeah.
Have you liked all of your jobs?
I loved every single one of them.
Right from the hotel to the gas station to the dishwashing to the taxis.
My father used to say, a job is like a prayer.
Yeah.
So, did I do jobs I didn't like? Yeah. I was a dishwasher. Hot.
Sucks.
Sweating, but at the end, you got a paycheck.
Yeah.
And when you went to the purser's office to pay your tuition, you had the money to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and the people in the job, right?
Yeah.
The team.
Yeah. At the end, you had to do what you had to do for survival. Failure was not an option. And at the end, remember the two words my father says. Did you get a job yet? And did you enroll in school?
Yeah.
You went there with a purpose. You went there to get an education. And you went there, and you can't get an education unless you can pay your bills, and you better get a job. And, to me, it worked out. And I was never ashamed. I'm probably as the only CEO who is the best grillman. So I work in Greek diners as a grillman. I'm the best breakfast guy.
Can you really crack 4 eggs?
I can crack, yeah. Who told you that?
I have my sources.
Okay.
So 2 in each hand, you crack them at once, 4 on the grill.
Yeah.
How long does it take to make a breakfast order? They say short order cooks. It's like, crack the eggs.
I used to go through a case a case of eggs in a diner is 36 dozen.
Okay.
I used to go through one case an hour.
Okay, wow. 36 dozens.
Right.
That's a lot of eggs, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're in the zone. I mean,
I
you
was
just...
in the zone. I used to work at Toomey's Diner.
Okay.
In across from the Ebbets Fields in Brooklyn.
Okay.
You know, when they demolished the stadium, the projects. The diner was across the street. Of course, it used to be a very famous diner, and then a Greek Cypriot bought it. You know, it was in a very, very poor neighborhood.
Yep.
You know, all my customers, they were African Americans. They were black, guys. And you see, they eat. I had orders. I had orders like 4 over easy. I mean,
right.
4 eggs and one plate, right?
Yeah.
You know, grits and bacon. I knew how to make grits because they love grits. You don't find that in a lot of diners, right? You get home fries, it was fun. I would work Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, and when I was in engineering school at NYU, and believe me, I was making enough money to pay my tuition, pay for my room, and even afford to have a junky car to get me around. Yeah.
When did you stop working more than one job?
Well, I was working throughout my college years. I was working multiple jobs.
Yep.
My main job was
school.
It was
presumably.
But if a friend of mine says, would you do 8 hours tonight on a cab, I will go out and do it. Because, if I did my homework, I didn't have anything, I'm going to go to school the next day, and the guy says, hey, I got the car sitting there, I'm not going to take it out. We used to get 40% cut, right?
Wow.
Right. 60% goes to the
medallion
owner,
owner.
40% goes to the driver. So if I went out in a night in those days and I make, a couple $100, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I will hustle, get to JFK, wait for, and all of that.
So you graduate from university, you get a job in the engineering business for a little bit. You still working 2 jobs there?
No.
You stopped then?
When I started working, and it was a short period of time. I only worked in engineering for about a year.
Okay.
And then I couldn't get top clearance, and then my career was pretty much over before it started. But I went back to my advisors at NAOU. I was, and they said, listen, you have so much math in your background. Why don't you go and get a job down at Wall Street as an analyst somewhere, either with an investment bank. You got a good degree. It's NYU, School of Engineering and Science, or an insurance company or a money center bank, And then give it a try. You're pretty good. You have a very analytical mind. And then go and get an MBA. And then, first job I got offered was AIG. They wanted me to help underwriters underwrite satellite launches.
Okay.
It was when the communication satellites, we're talking about mid-70s now.
Yep.
Right? And I got discovered by Hank Greenberg. And
what does that mean? Discovered. How did he discover you?
There was an incident that there was some bad underwriting, and they ignore my recommendations in the report. I wrote a report about,
some technical flaw.
Well, not a technical flaw, but I said the probability of failure should be around 14-15%. And in essence, if you're going to price this business, you got to be charging a rate of 18 to 20 because you got to put expenses.
Yep.
And the going rate was like 6%, and they wrote the risk at 6%. And of course, if the probability of failure is about 15%, 1 in 6 are going to fail, and it happened to fail. So he wanted to see who did the evaluation, etc. And they eliminate my report from the file.
Oh, did they? Oh, no.
And then he said to the head of the engineering department, I thought I asked you to hire somebody who knows anything about this business. And I says, I did. And he says, where is his report? He says, I don't know, but I have a copy in my office. Just go and get it. And Cliff Stone was the head of the engineering department, got the report.
This is your boss?
My boss.
Yep.
At the engineering department. So he took it up. He says, I want to meet this kid.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
and you go? How old are you there?
I was 27.
And how old is Hank at that point? 60 something?
Well, Hank, let's go. He's 25 years senior to me.
Okay,
so
mid-50s.
It was early 50s.
Yep,
right?
okay.
Yeah. So.
And before that meeting, what did you know about him?
Oh, he was
living legend already.
Living legend already.
Yeah.
I mean, he, so
bit of a tough guy.
Very tough, very tough. But
you knew that much.
So he says, I'm gonna put you on the fast track program.
Okay.
They had a fast track.
So he liked what he saw when you walked in the.
Well, he talked about my background.
Okay, right.
No different interview that you're doing with me. Where were you born? Who was your father? How did you come here?
Yeah.
He says, you're smart and hungry, and I like that. He says, I'm going to put you on the fast track program and see how you do.
Yep.
And the rest of it is history.
Yeah.
1982, I was 32 years old. I made Civistar partner.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that was, and one of the hardest weeks in my life is when I left AIG.
Yeah. How and why, and I mean.
Well, he introduced me to Warren Buffett.
Yep.
Because we're gonna do a transaction, and that transaction didn't happen, and the Berkshire people, Mike Goldberg and the group, including Warren, they were impressed with our negotiations, my knowledge of the business, etc. So 6 months later, they came and they said, would you come and join us? Mm-hmm. And I did, and that created a little bit of a tension between Hank and Warren.
Sure. So what was that conversation like with Hank?
Oh, he used to throw my resignation letter. You lost your mind,
Right.
No. This is your house. This is where you belong.
Yeah.
Or you're going to go work for some guy who doesn't know anything about insurance.
Yeah.
That was his...
I've heard before that comments from Hank Greenberg about how people don't understand insurance. What does he mean by that? What is it that people don't understand about insurance?
Well, they don't understand, that it's a risky business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're managing risk. Mm-hmm. You got to price it appropriately, and there is many pitfalls. It's getting easier today than 50 years ago, because the flow of information is so much better. Mm-hmm. The Google has been the biggest invention in underwriting, because now companies, they can hide. They will not lie about their past, but they're not going to come and I says, I've sinned and I've sinned and I've sinned.
Sure.
What you don't know won't hurt you. So the old crafty brokers in our early days, they won't tell you the bad things. They will always present the risk.
Yep.
With the most positive light, right? Mm-hmm. And it was up to you to find out
what was really going on. The skeletons in the closet.
And the tools, they were not as available then as they are today. Now, it's been many years since I was a desk underwriter, but I can tell you the job has become a lot easier for those who want to practice great underwriting. Because underwriting is good analysis of information, making judgments, and putting an appropriate price, and you have to be disciplined in the way you do it. And if you're not disciplined, if you're not patient and disciplined, you're not going to do well. Arch has done well because I always insisted in collaboration. I wanted people to talk to each other, pricing actuaries, with the claims people, with the underwriters as a team, because let's face it, it's simple math. One mind is not as good as two minds, is not as good as three minds. I take three minds working together in collaboration to make a good decision. Because when you step back, what is the insurance business? What do you manufacture? I ask that question to a lot of people. What do you manufacture? You manufacture decisions. Mm-hmm. It's no different than the investment business. In the investment business, what do? You don't make widgets, you don't make cars, you don't make chairs, you make decisions. You analyze a company, you analyze the strategy. Same thing with underwriting. You look at the company, you look at the risk that they're facing, etc., and you make a decision as to what is an appropriate price for you to take that risk and give them the protection that they need. And so collaboration is very important. Working as teams is very important. And not taking shortcuts, meaning you have to do the analysis. There is no, shortcuts. And as technology has improved, the ability of information to flow freely, and you find it, you can Google a local little paper, and if they have a plan in Timbuktu, you'll find out if they had an explosion 5 years ago. Yep. And even if the broker didn't tell you, it's up to you to find out. And it's easy today to do it when it was not easy 40 years ago.
So one thing that is, I guess, famous about the AIG kind of classic culture was that it was actually pretty competitive, right? So people advance, and Hank picks people and pulls them out of the pack and says, you're now, and then they have divisions, which legend has it, I don't know a whole lot about it directly, but competed against each other. And so you're emphasizing a lot of collaboration. But then, from what I hear about AIG, there's a lot of competition. Is there? Am I understanding it right? Or I mean,
there was competition. There was always competition between the Lexington people and American Home, right? And there wasn't as much between AIU and because they were most the foreign division, etc. But there was some internal competition because, is this account a standard account and go to the standard market, or this account is a surplus lines account and go to the surplus lines market?
Yep.
And but that doesn't, because there was internal, competition. The way Hank viewed it, it was no different than the other 50 competitors you have on the outside. Mm-hmm. Right? What's the difference? Why create barriers? If a unit has better ideas and they can, take a product and be more successful at the expense of some other division within AIG, so be it, because there is another 50, 60, 100 insurance companies that are trying to do the same. Mm-hmm. So by eliminating one internally, you haven't eliminated the other 50 or 60. So what difference does it make?
So does that mean that there's like a limitation to how many minds can be focused on a single problem productively, right? So right. 1 better, 2 better than 1, 3 better than 2, but 50 not necessarily better than 15 or 10.
No, because then you get to analysis paralysis at some point in time. Is bringing it's a cultural thing.
Okay.
Everybody's busy. But if you have an open mind and you have collaboration, with the right number of people, I think you're in the business of manufacturing decisions, mm-hmm. right? So the quality of the decision that you make will determine the ultimate outcome, right? And if you eliminate defects, because people don't try to make the wrong decisions get made because you're trying to do something, right? Mm-hmm. But by eliminating a lot of wrong decisions, the company will go and forward and succeed. And I want collaboration to happen all the way with this simplicity of risk down at the bottom, all the way to the big decisions that they get all the way to the C-suite. Mm-hmm. Because you got to have that team. You got to have that team, and the collaboration. And once you achieve that, you have something culturally that really is very powerful, within, the organization. There is residual positive effects on that culture too. In the insurance business, even though we have more universities now, St. John's University School of Risk Management, that they teach the basics, a lot of the art of underwriting happens through practical experience. And the more a company collaborates, the transfer of knowledge, both inwards and outwards, accelerates significantly.
Yeah.
So how do you get the younger generation to learn from the old crafty underwriters? By collaborating.
Yep.
Because, and believe me, young people sometimes will come with ideas that the older people will not even think about, because culturally they were not brought up in that fashion. So I'm a big proponent of collaboration on any business that is decision-making, a decision-making business. What does an actuary do? He makes decisions every single day, right? You sit there, you analyze, and you make decisions. Talking to claims people, talking to underwriters, etc., it enhances, your ability to make a better judgment.
As on this podcast, I interviewed Paul Ingray, a colleague of yours for a long time.
It was one of the founders of Arch.
Yes.
It was Bob Clements, Paul Ingray, and I. Yeah.
He worried a lot about companies getting too big. So he would say, I get nervous when, I forget the number he picked, maybe it was like 25 or something like ridiculously small number of people. Because I think his point there was that you lose some of the intimacy, I guess, of the collaboration once the organization gets large. It's a very reinsurance kind of thing, right? Insurance companies are different. They're bigger,
right?
Much bigger,
right?
Doing harder things. You moved from AIG to Berkshire Hathaway, though. Not a big company, Berkshire Hathaway.
At that time.
Large balance sheet, but small team.
That's correct.
What do you think about that transition? Very different kind of organization.
It is. I think Paul was right. The larger the organization, the more challenges in maintaining that cultural collaborative attitude. But you can do it. You can do it. If you view each profit center, if you organize a company into a profit center, they're small modules. It's if you have 1,000 SEAL teams, they're going to be as effective as any SEAL team that has 12, 15 members.
Yeah, okay.
And now you got 15,000 of them.
Yeah.
And they do. They're called Special Forces, and some is the Delta Force, and some is the SEAL Force. But the culture, tough training, ability, and working collaboratively with each other, it's all there. And then you got to take that and translate that into an organization. Now, tougher in insurance, because you got to create all these teams and allow them to operate in the marketplace without stepping over each other. But I wouldn't do it any other way. The collaborative culture within an insurance company, it will directly affect the results.
Hey, what was the role you had at Berkshire Hathaway? What did you get called on to do?
When I went there, I was running their commercial insurance operations.
Okay.
And then Ajit Jain was running the reinsurance operation.
Okay.
Right. And then...
based in Stamford, were you? Or were you out in Omaha?
We were here at 84 William Street.
New York, okay.
84 William Street, and we used to go... Ajit and I, he had a floor, I had on a floor, and then we used to go to Omaha once a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how'd that go? I mean, that was a very hard market, that kind of late 80s, mid-late
80s. We did well, not as well as I wanted to do.
Why not?
And we had an individual who reported to, Mike Goldberg, and he was very risk-averse, so he was holding us back. That's the reason I left Berkshire. I stayed there for 5 years, and then, I moved on to Zurich to be the chief executive in Zurich, North America, because I knew that it wasn't going to be, a big operation. Once I left, I think Warren recognized that with Mike in charge of all insurance operations at that time, people were leaving, etc. So he moved him, and then he put Ajit in charge of it. And Ajit has done extremely well, and he gave him more of a leeway to do things that Mike will never do.
So Warren Buffett and Hank Greenberg, in my conception of it, radically different people.
Yes.
Is there anything in common? What do they share?
The thing that they share that is common is they make decisions based on a lot of analysis and a lot of knowledge. Both of them, Warren reads enormous volume of information, and he has a sixth sense that is what I'm thinking logical. Can it happen? And Hank always made decisions based on, at least my interaction with him. When you went to see him, you better have all the facts in order.
Yeah.
You don't go by guessing. Go by having the appropriate information. He was, both of them, they were tremendous focus on detail. And they liked the detail. Different minds, different attitudes, etc. But if I had to say what was both a secret ingredient to both in their decision making, they will base it on a lot of facts and knowledge.
Anything in particular about your own leadership style that you might have learned from Hank,
That was
Warren?
both,
that one.
I learned it from Hank first, and Warren reinforced it.
Right. That was it.
They pay attention to detail. You're not going to get every decision right, but the likelihood of getting the decisions right starts by having a lot of detail. And pay attention to it. And I did through my entire career.
And is it just an intuition you have because you can get overwhelmed by that, right? One of the things that I notice about actuaries, and this will be the case for many different kinds of people, but is that you use the phrase paralysis by analysis, and I think that is a common thing where you just want to have it be perfect, right? And so endless detail and go. This is probably not a great question, but how do you think about that? I've had enough. I know what to do now.
Well, perfection is the enemy of good enough.
Sure, right.
Right, at the end of the day. And at some point, it depends on your risk appetite and all that as to how good is good enough.
Yeah.
Because the lesson I learned from Mike Goldberg, which I worked for at Berkshire Hathaway, I wasn't reporting to Warren, I would report to Mike Goldberg, who would report it to Warren Buffett. It was, for Mike, good enough was never, he wanted perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he overlearned this lesson about detail.
And at the end, if you're trying to achieve perfection, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's at some point in time, there is the opposite that, people will make decisions with very little information, and, it's not the right approach when you're in the risk business. But, you're taking risk. The question is it priced appropriately? And, the other big lesson that I learned from Warren Buffett is that if you're making a decision that it will be catastrophic to the company, even though the probabilities of that happening, they're very small, 1%, right? Mm-hmm. Don't do it.
Never bet the farm.
Never bet the farm, even if the probability is very low. And there was a few other lessons that I learned from him. Worry, spend 80% of your time worrying about the downside, protecting the downside, and only 20% about the upside. And believe me, at the end, the upside will take care of itself. And the best one, he says, don't rush your mind. Give yourself the ability to think things through. And he says, when you're going to make a good decision, listen to different people, but at the end of the day, put your feet on the table, lean back, think it through. If it's logical to you and you think you're making a good decision, go ahead.
Manufacturing a good decision.
Yeah. Manufacture the decision, take it, and go.
So these strike me as really deep, important skills and practices for being good at insurance. These lessons you learned from Warren. Why did Hank think Warren wasn't good at insurance?
Hank
just thought nobody was good at insurance. Maybe.
If your name wasn't Hank Greenberg, you weren't good in insurance. Warren Buffett is brilliant in insurance.
Yeah.
He understands that it's the game that you create your own odds.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Insurance is you borrowing money with an implicit interest rate, and you determine that. Is it going to be, 1, 2, 3, 4%, or is it going to be -1, -2, -3, and that's why he talks about the float.
Yep.
And if you're successful in underwriting in insurance business, under 100, so in essence, you borrowing money, which you're going to keep for a long period of time and eventually pay out, but your cost of funds are less than zero. That's a wonderful business. And basically, we were very, very focused on that when we worked for Warren Buffett, to make sure that, that's exactly what was happening. On the other hand, you can take undue risk, and all of a sudden, your borrowing cost, it might be 10%.
Yeah.
And then, I don't care how good you are as an investor, you won't be able to make it, and that's when you start losing money.
Yeah, their culture's the same way. I mean, we do business with them now, and they say the same things. Obviously, that's something that's deep about Berkshire Hathaway, thinking like that.
Well, I mean,
and everywhere.
It is. And I did ask Warren as to when did this idea that the insurance business is a great place to be. And he says when he was a very, very young kid, he went to Vegas with his father, who was a senator. And he says they were walking the casino, and he saw all these rich people in nice suits and all that, playing games that they knew the odds they are against them.
Nuts, really.
Right. And basically he says, when I grow up, I want to be in a game
On the other side.
that I'm the house. The odds, they're with me. And the insurance business gives him that ability. I mean, Geico sets the odds. They set the rates, etc., and they want to have a certain margin. And if they do it well, they get that margin. I don't care if it's 3, 4, 5%, whatever it is. It's a good business to be in. Same thing with, the reinsurance division or the insurance divisions that they have. As long as, Ajit produces quite a bit of float and the float costs less than zero, that's a wonderful business.
Mm-hmm. So you go from having, maybe not directly reporting to, but having enough personal contact with two of the probably most successful insurance executives of all time.
Right.
Right? I mean, number one and number two, which one's which, I'm not sure, but it's
I
probably
would
a
say
gap.
Warren is number one.
Yeah.
Hank.
Don't tell Hank.
Yeah. Hank.
He probably won't listen to this.
Hank took some risks sometimes that I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Warren wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And so you leave and go to Zurich. Now, yes. I don't know too much about their Zurich organization, partly because it's based out of Switzerland, but there doesn't seem to me to be as much of a kind of legendary leadership at the top of that organization. And am I wrong about that? What prompted you? I mean, you said that you were leaving a situation that you felt like you wanted to do more. You felt constrained at Berkshire, but going to Zurich, why Zurich?
Well, Zurich is an opportunity to be a chief executive.
Yep. Become the leader.
Become the leader, not of the holding company, but for their North American operations.
Biggest division probably? Was it the biggest division in the company?
Not originally when I went there, because I was a CEO of Zurich America, which was the branch of the parent in the U.S. But they own a lot of other operations: Universal Underwriters, Empire Farm Marine, Maryland Casualty, Fidelity and Deposit, Zurich Canada, etc. And they were underperforming units. They were not. They asked me to consolidate all that, and I did, and I created Zurich North America, which is now their biggest division within the Zurich world, especially since they bought Farmers, later on.
Consolidating, that means you're merging divisions of a company. That must be really tough work.
Very tough work. Very tough.
People are not liking that, I imagine.
Later on. But there were a lot of inefficiencies. There were, we had 14 underwriting systems. 14 claim systems, 8 underwriting systems. Wow. Each company had their own, and some of them they had to. So, I try to, consolidate it back rooms and get efficiency. Not easy to do, but I had a great partner, in doing that, which I think is
who's that?
Mark Lyons.
Okay.
Mark Lyons worked with me at AIG. Then we left together. We went to Berkshire together. Okay. Then we left to go to Zurich together, and then we came to Arch. And he left Arch when I retired, and he's the CFO at AIG now.
Yeah.
He's the chief executive back to AIG, working for Brian Duberl,
yeah.
which is also a good friend, and I've known
from the AIG days.
Way back, all these years. But that was a very, very challenging assignment, and I would have stayed at Zurich because I was the designated heir apparent, and then Ralph Hoopi wouldn't want to give me the job, and I had all these opportunities, people calling me to, and says, hey, we got this wonderful opportunity to do a NUCO and start Arch, and I left. I wasn't going to stay with Zurich waiting for, and then when I left, within 3 months, they fired Hoopi.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I want to come back to this moment when you show up, and then you probably know in your mind or in your heart that you're going to have to fire a lot of people, I would think. When you come to Zurich, do you expect that? When do you realize that? How do you do that?
I did, and
because that's difficult, right? I mean, the emotional toll.
It's very, very difficult, especially if. To me, I have this belief that employees is the most valuable asset of the company.
Yeah.
Capital you can always get and all that. If you have great employees, you're going to get customers. You're going to get distributors. So, and then there should be a balance between the professional aspirations of these employees and also their personal obligations. So you got to create a company with a culture that we respect both. We don't want employees to feel that they're slaves to the company and vice versa. And I try to promote that culture everywhere, I went, including Zurich, which was difficult because there were companies in different places with different cultures, etc. And it's hard when you have 15,000 employees and you know that you probably need only 10.
Wow. Right?
So how do you do it? Of course...
Because everybody's asking you. You show up and they're like, are you going to fire a bunch of people? And what do you say?
Well, I mean, it's... The beauty of the insurance business, and also the anathema of the insurance business is that the turnover is pretty high.
Yeah, okay.
Usually, most companies there have about... In the companies that I run, our turnover, it was around 9-10%. But in the business, it's usually around 15-16%. So if you're a little patient and you're willing to talk to employees and say, hey, we're going to try to protect as many jobs, and we're going to eliminate excess unnecessary jobs through attrition. You can't do it all through attrition, but you can do a lot of it. Don't forget, 15% on 15,000 people is 2,000 people come in and out of the company every year.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe you replace 500 because they're critical, but the other 15 you don't, and you rely. Within 2-3 years, you get to equilibrium. So we try, and Mark was phenomenal in helping me, Mark Lyons, making sure that we were a little more patient instead of, because you can injure the organization if you go and do. The analysts like to hear that. Oh, I'm going to cut 3,000 jobs, and I'm going to.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
you
expense,
do more
just numbers.
and you
Dollars.
do more damage culturally
Yeah.
than if you do it in a, you know. And I'm not talking about people who they're pulling their own weight within the company. If it's performance issues, you create an organization that says, hey, if you're not a good performer, we're going to ask you to leave because you're not fair to the guy sitting next to you, because he is pulling extra workload to cover for you, which you're not doing your workload.
Yeah. He's cracking 4 eggs, you're cracking 1.
That's exactly correct.
So what was it that Mark brought that helped you so much? What was his quality that complemented yours?
Compassion and intellect at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, he was very compassionate. You know, he understood that there is ways to do it, and he viewed employees as people, not units. And and he has a tremendous amount of intellect. You know, so he knew long term and also the short term, you know, benefits as to how to do it. I rather have the extra expense for another year or two and do it in a smoother way.
Yeah.
And then you gaining the confidence of the employees when you tell them, hey, you know, because later on you're going to ask managers not to overstaff. I always, in my speeches, you can probably Google a lot of them, I always said, very rarely in the insurance business, who has grown on average 3-4% a year, right? And he has a 10 to 15% turnover. Overstaffing is the problem of management. Because there is enough in and out of the company for you to manage and have the right workforce for the workload that is necessary. And don't blame the employees for overstaffing. Blame the managers. You know, and what I instill upon all managers and employees is when you're making a decision that I need another person, make sure you need that other person for the next 10 years. Not I need it for the next year or so, and then, we'll get rid of him. That's not a way to run a company. If you're going to give somebody a job, look him in the eye and says, that's a permanent job. As long as you do, you know, the job well, you don't have to worry about your job. And that's a strong message. And the CEO got to live it, breathe it, and it has to permeate through the senior management and all the way down.
What do you think? What was the part of being a CEO that you liked the least? That was most, I mean, I don't know, but difficult, but the part you're like, I hate this part of the job.
Well, I mean, the
hardest.
The hardest part of the job, it was, you know, you got to make the ultimate decisions. And sometimes, you know, I felt that I was making a decision and I wasn't 100% sure it was the right one, but you had to make a decision. And that, I used to agonize about that quite often.
Is there an example that you can come up with a time that you felt that way? It could be, you know, back in history or...
we had a company called Universal Underwriters.
Okay.
And it was a direct writing company.
Okay.
When I consolidated the Zurich, it was a company that every other company, Maryland Casualty, etc., with the exception of universal underwriters, there were distribution. It was agents and brokers.
Okay.
And I was getting a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
From the brokerage community. Oh, we like to be able to submit to universal underwriters, and I agonized a long time. At the end, I think I made the right decision to keep them separate and independent and have their direct sales force. But I came close to making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And now I step back and I say, yeah, you know, thank God I was lucky. It was a flip of a coin, not because you feel the pressure from one side, and you got great relationships with all these brokers, Marsh, Aon, you know, and Willis, and you go all the way to Gallagher, etc. And it says, hey, you know, we got auto dealerships. Why don't we submit them? But I says, that company is a direct writing company. They have a culture of their own. I didn't want to. I was big on culture. I didn't want to destroy the culture. And the direct sales force and the relationships they have with the local dealers, I think, it was part of their success. You know, because they knew their customers intimately, which is the beginning of the underwriting process. Who am I doing business with? Do I trust them? What is their track record? If you've had our salespeople go up and down auto dealership boulevard, which every town has it, and you see one dealer after another, and they knew, this is a good one, this is a good one, this is a guy we don't want to write, this is a good one. That was the beginning. Of course, you got to make the financials work, right? The underwriting process, and you got to agree on coverages and prices, but at the end of the day, that's the beginning of selection.
Yeah, we're kind of running a little on time, but there's two topics I want to cover. I'm going to come back to culture because that's so important. But before we get there, there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which was the interplay between, let's call it quality of strategy and market opportunity. Again, back to the conversation I had with Pauline Gray, he more or less said, and this is my words, so I don't want to put him in his mouth, but he basically said that the market drives the opportunity. The market will give you the opportunity, and it's there or it is not. And if it is not, just wait for the market to give you an opportunity. So the hard market underwriting kind of style. And that's obviously the opportunity in which Arch was founded and exploited to great success. But that's not the case everywhere and all the time. There isn't always a hard market somewhere for you to exploit to great success. What do you think about this idea that the hard market is really the time when an insurance company can shine? In other market cycles, they aren't as good, just fundamentally aren't as good.
In principle, he's absolutely correct. But, you know, it depends how you see the world and where the opportunities are, right? Because if you remain narrow in your thinking, you will not find the opportunities. In underwriting, the two principles you must have is discipline and crisp execution. So in any market, if you discipline and you have good execution, you will still find transactions that you can do. Maybe not in the volume that you would like, that it will give you good profitability. That means you're willing to lose volume. But when you lose volume in one area, you always have to look in other areas. A great example with Arch, when the financial crisis happened, we saw opportunities in the mortgage space. 75%, 80% of our earnings today, they're coming from mortgage insurance.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right?
Heck of a transition.
It was pivoting from less reinsurance, less insurance, more mortgage insurance, a new line of business for us, a new world for us, etc. And I can't tell what the future will bring, but I'm sure my grandson, running the company, he believes in that philosophy. He worked for Paul, he worked for me for all these years, that if the opportunities are in reinsurance, we're going to allocate capital there. If the opportunity is in the insurance space, we're going to allocate. And the insurance space is broad. Is, different products, different distributions. There's the wholesale channel, there's the retail channel. There's all these products, from professional liability to directors and officers liability to the traditional auto, GL, and workers' comp. And then you get customer groups within. Where do you specialize and how do you access that business? So you always have to be looking, but you got to fall back to that original two principles. You have to be disciplined and you have to execute well.
Why do you think Arch, so me and as a spectator and student of the business, haven't noticed Arch being mentioned in a lot of M&A, at least as a target, as a seller. Why do you think that is? I mean, it seems like everybody else from time to time gets brought up in a conversation.
We get some calls,
yeah.
And but they always felt that were expensive.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That helps. A reward for good execution.
Yeah, but at the end, at the end of the day, is you pay for what you get, and
right.
There is a difference in price between a Yugo and a Bentley or a Rolls Royce. Mm-hmm. I think Arch is a Bentley Rolls Royce, type of an example versus a Yugo.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you've seen more transactions because people think they buy something cheap. Mm-hmm. Right? The only one that I've seen that it was significant size and he paid very good price for it is Ace when they bought Chubb. Right?
Yeah.
And
shocking one. I mean, nobody saw that coming. That was amazing.
No. And it's the attitude of Evan, who's a good friend of mine, that, I don't mind paying when I'm getting quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody has stepped up to pay for the quality of Arch. But it doesn't mean it might not happen.
Yeah, sure.
At the right price, I think everything is for sale, right? And vice versa. We looked at Universal Underwriting, so I had my eyes on it for 3-4 years before even we bought it from AIG. But I didn't like what they were asking, the price. And then when the price got to the point that it was attractive to us, we made the transaction. And we bought it for a little over $3 billion at that time. And here's a company who is producing $800 million of profits a year.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Yeah, it's a terrific deal. Yeah.
So the source of Arch's, let's call it defenses, is maybe you would say culture.
It is. Culture, being disciplined, spending a lot of time to make sure the execution is crisp, and more importantly, attracting and retaining talent. Mm-hmm. Because in a business that is a decision-making business, the quality of the people that you have is it's not measurable, right? But it makes the difference. If you don't have good quality people, you can have the best rules, you can have the best processes, etc. It's not going to happen.
How do you get them?
It's culture. You develop it, and it starts from the head, the CEO, and it goes down to, and it's how you treat people. And if you treat people as professionals and you do respect, that they have both professional needs to grow and get to the next level, and promote from within and give people opportunities to achieve, and also you're accommodating, their family obligations. For example, at Arch, we will never stop an employee to go at 3:00 in the afternoon to see a play because their kid is playing in the local high school. I told managers, you put that prohibition and I'm going to fire you.
Yeah.
Because that employee is going to give me productivity in spades when he does that, because you're respecting, his ability to go and see his child, either on a soccer field or in the theater, and it's only going to happen that one time at that moment, and if he's not there, he's missing that moment, and I don't want him to miss that moment. And if he has a report to write, or if he has an analysis to do, he can get home from 8 to midnight and do it, and the next day everything is hanky-dory. He's happy and the company's happy, because he believes that we respected him. And believe me, most employees, they will give you that much back, for appreciating, what you do for them.
So what you're saying there isn't controversial, I don't think. Why don't more companies do it? Why do you think that you're able to distinguish yourself from the companies you've led in that way, and others can't?
Because I don't know. I mean, it is, there is this Greek word called Philotimo.
Okay.
You can Google it. It doesn't totally translate, but it says it's the love, philos, means love, and timi means honor. I want people that they have a lot of philotimo. They love honor. And if you honor them, they will honor you. And if it permeates from the CEO down, I think gets embedded into the organization. They know that it's not words. Words don't mean a dumb thing.
Right.
It's the actions. It's you leading by example, And, of course, as the company gets larger and larger, it's back to the difficulty that Paul was sharing with you, Paul Ingray, that it gets harder and harder to keep that cohesive, because the cultural cohesion is going to come from the leadership team and also the local leadership teams, and not every person will believe.
Yeah.
I'm totally committed to it, and I was a big proponent, but you get a lot of people. Yeah. The worst cancer in a company is politics.
What does that mean? What is politics?
Politics is, I'm going to undermine my colleague because, get him out of the way because I want to get his position and all that. And that's a cancer that eats companies alive.
Anti-collaboration.
It's anti-collaboration, it's backstabbing, it's knifing, and all that. You get that in a company, is the cancer that eventually destroys it.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring it back to Cyprus to close.
Sure.
So you opened an office in Cyprus.
Well, it's a service office.
Right.
It's a small,
Still, probably the only insurance company in the Bermuda-based or U.S.-based insurance company with an office in Cyprus, I must think. Tell me about that.
Well,
obviously, you're supporting your homeland. I mean, that's an important part of who you are.
I felt that certain type of employees, well-educated, high degree of intellect, but a strong desire to go back home and live there.
Yeah.
Could have been a good asset for us. And these are actuaries, mathematicians, some accountants. And that work can be done with electronics today anywhere in the world.
Of course.
Don't forget, Arch has almost 600 employees in the Philippines.
Wow.
That's for IT work and backroom work, etc. And it's because of cost, etc. The Cyprus office was more about quality. Mm-hmm. Can I get high-end personnel at a low cost? And because I'm a Cypriot, I can arrange for that.
Yes, the
and
connections,
it's been
access.
successful. I'm surprised they haven't grown. If I was the CEO now, that office would have been 50, 60 people instead of, I think we have 20 people there. Because, the quality and the cost is so much superior. We get fully accredited actuaries for 3,000 euros a month. That's 36,000 a year.
Wow. And
it's the same kind and quality of actuaries we get here, which we have to pay probably 150,000. Or so there is part is outsourcing, and part of it is let me get the quality at a much lower cost.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you get people. So when you make that decision, you wind up generating an enormous amount of appreciation because they get to do the work, right? The high quality work, but live the lifestyle. You had to leave.
That's
right?
right.
Not everybody necessarily needs to leave in this day and age.
Exactly. A lot of them, they want to go and live back home. And I'm on the board of directors of Verisk, the old ISO, which became a for-profit company and is very successful. And we just opened in a big office in Romania for the same reason.
Wow.
We're going to have a lot of analytics done there because we can get high-quality individuals at a much lower cost than in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And now this is a global world, and more and more students, they come get educated in the U.S. or in the U.K., and they want to go back home. Mm-hmm. International corporations should give them the opportunity to work, and that was the idea behind it.
Mm-hmm. And it's been successful.
Very successful. Yeah.
Great. Any closing thoughts on what are you doing right now? What opportunities are you looking at? What are you excited about in the insurance industry or outside?
Well, I think the market is moving into a positive territory, and I think it will be good for the business over the next few years, and it will give opportunities for Arch and others to grow in that. Me personally, I'm joining a couple of boards, and there is a few calls for me to take CEO jobs, but I can't do anything that is competitive with Arch, so I have to find the right opportunity. On the other hand, I'm 69, so I don't know if I want to get back into the trenches. Part of me says yes, do it, and part of me says, mostly my wife says don't do it. But it will depend on the opportunity. But I have a lot of knowledge of 45 years in the business. So for the right opportunity and the right company, I think I can contribute quite a bit. And if it comes, I'll take it. If it doesn't, I'm still happy with what I'm doing.
Well, thank you for your contributions today. My guest today is Dinos Iordanou. Dinos, thanks for joining me on the show.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.